Spider-Man Web of Shadows. Because once again, it's a very similar-ish situation. So on the Wii, the Xbox 360, PS3, and PC, you have this 3D open-world action-adventure game, you know, whatever you want to call it. Beat 'em up. I don't want to say too much about Web of Shadows, because that is a game where there's a lot happening in the game, and the less said about it, the better, just from like a spoilers perspective. But the combat in that game, let me just say first things first, the combat in that game is absolutely insane. It's almost like DMC meets Spider-Man in a way, not necessarily with like the hack and slashing bits, but it's just like with how fast combat is and how reliant it is on combos and just like all these flashy attacks and stuff like that. But obviously in the main game, it's all about like, you know, your decisions and stuff like that, where there's gonna be certain parts of the story where you can make a decision as Red Suit Spider-Man, which is like the quote-unquote good choice, or, you know, the bad choice as Black Suit Spider-Man. And ultimately, the decisions you make will have an outcome by the end of the story as to what ending you get, whether it's the good ending or whether it's the bad ending, or, again, I don't want to spoil it because I know not as many people have played this compared to other Spider-Man games. Well, let me just say, the bad ending in Web of Shadows, like the 360, PS3, PC, and Wii version, like the bad ending is just, it's so crazy, it's so outlandish, it's so out there, but I absolutely love it. It's just like, I don't know, there's something about like that comic book nerd's brain in me where it's just like, dude, seeing that what if scenario, it's just like, it's so quirky, but it's so cool. But then you have the PS2 version, well, PS2/PSP version of this game, which is actually the one that I grew up with on the PS2, because like, I did have Web of Shadows for like the other consoles and stuff like that a bit later on, but the first way that I played this game was actually with the PS2/PSP version called the Amazing Allies Edition. And instead of this being some 3D open world game, this is actually, it's not necessarily a 2D, it's not like a Metroidvania, it's a 2D game, but it's not like a Metroidvania like the other one we were talking about, which there is a Metroidvania version of this game, which we'll talk about, but instead it's like a 2D, not really a platformer, but just like a linear action 2D game. Think along the lines of almost like Mega Man, where Mega Man, yes, it is, that is more of like a platformer, I guess you could say, but it's more about like the action and stuff like that and the skills and the abilities you get from the different bosses. It's sort of like that, less of the Mega Man elements though. You're just kind of, you know, kind of traversing, jumping, crawling occasionally, just, you know, traversing the levels. But in this game, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's a 2D beat 'em up, but it's a lot of fun. There's very little actual dialogue in this game, like voice dialogue. Most of it is just like text walls and stuff. But in these text walls, you're forced to make decisions way more than in the other versions of the games. That being said, the decisions that you make have much less of an outcome or an impact on the story compared to the other versions of the game, but you do have to make these decisions much more frequently. Like when you're talking to certain characters, are you gonna, you know, make the Red Suit decisions, then you get the information that you need, or are you gonna go the Black Suit route and threaten the person that you're talking to, which could then maybe scare them off and therefore they won't give you the information you need, so then you need to go search somewhere else in the room to look for a certain password to open a certain door. Like there's a lot of cool and small little details and different dynamic elements like that in this game. And again, I've always loved this version of the game for some reason, even though it is just like a 2D kind of like beat 'em up action game. I always just felt like there was something about the tone in this game where it's like, sure, you know, at the time, the next gen console versions, like obviously that game was, you know, rather gritty. You see like the opening, it's memed to death all the time with like the piano music of Spider-Man looking real sad. But this one, it also had like that edgy tone to it, and I always loved that. It also has like the same voice actors for like Spider-Man and stuff like that in the game, so you know that personality is still there in that respect. The one thing I will say about the game is that like the ending, again, not gonna spoil it, but if you've seen the ending to this game, you know what I'm talking about. And in fact, even if you haven't played the game, I could probably recommend looking up the thing for the ending, just because it's like, oh, okay. And the reason that the game is called the Amazing Allies Edition, it's literally just for one feature in the game where there's like this bar at the top, and before you go into a level, you can choose like what allies you want to take in with you. So say you want to take in like Professor X, Sandman, and Wolverine, you press circle, and then a PNG pops up on the screen of like their face, and then like a giant screen wipe attack comes through. And that's it. You don't actually see their character models in game. It's just a PNG flashes and then a screen wipe, and then that's it. There is also other abilities you can get, like healing and more damage and, you know, temporary invincibility and stuff like that, but yeah. Personally, it never really disappointed me back in the day. I always had a lot of fun with the game, and, you know, I still have a lot of fun with the game. That's another one where both on my PS2 and my PSP, I'm revisiting it constantly. Is there a bit of nostalgia there? Yes, obviously a lot of nostalgia, but at the same time, it's just, you know, they're fun games. And then we move on to the DS version, and similarly to Shattered Dimensions, as we were talking about, Spider-Man Web of Shadows on DS is a 2D Metroidvania. Literally everything that I said about Shattered Dimensions applies here, aside from the multiple Spider-Man elements. So it's 2D Metroidvania, except there's only one one world this time, since it's only one Spider-Man. You can switch between the red and the black suit. And similar to before, you're just trying to fill out the map, upgrade your character, you'll defeat certain bosses, get more abilities that you can be used earlier in the game. It's literally the exact same developers, exact same engine as Shattered Dimensions. Obviously, Web of Shadows came out first, but you know what I mean. It's like, it runs on the same engine as all that, so most of it still applies. There is those like decision-making parts too, where it's like, hey, at this point in the story, you can help out this character, or you can help out another character, which will determine what boss fight you get, and like who you fight, and who says what, and who you end up teaming with. Again, not gonna spoil anything, but it's actually really cool and really dynamic. One thing I will say though is that one of the boss fights towards the end of the game, man, on my first playthrough, I do remember I wasn't exactly prepared for that boss fight, so it was a little spongy, it was a little difficult, but as long as you like properly prepare and you like thoroughly search the map before that point in the game comes, you'll be alright. Regardless, no matter what version of Web of Shadows you go with, you can't go wrong. They're all amazing in their own ways, and again, same name, but they're all completely different games.